On the surface of Agrathia, Arthur wandered about moodily. Ford had thoughtfully left him his copy of The Hitch-Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy to while away the time with. Oh, sorry. This is Chapter 21. Chapter 21. On the surface of Magrathia, Arthur wandered about moodily. Ford had thoughtfully left him his copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to while away the time with. He pushed a few buttons at random. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a very unevenly edited book and contains many passages that simply seemed to its editors like a good idea at the time. One of them, like the one Arthur now came across, supposedly relates to the experiences of one Vít Vujicic, a quiet young student at the University of Maximegalon, who pursued a brilliant academic career studying ancient philology, transformational ethics, and the wave harmonic theory of historical perception, and then, after a night of drinking pan-galactic gargle blasters with Zaphod Beeblebrox, became increasingly obsessed with the problem of what had happened to all the bureaus he'd bought over the past few years. There had followed a long period of painstaking research during which he visited all the major centers of bureau lost throughout the galaxy, and eventually came up with a quaint little theory which quite caught the public imagination at the time. Somewhere in the cosmos, he said, along with all the planets inhabited by humanoids, reptiloids, fishoids, walking treoids, and superintelligent shades of the color blue, there was also a planet entirely given over to bureau lifeforms, and it was to this planet that unattended bureaus would make their way, slipping away quietly through wormholes in the space, to a world where they knew they could enjoy a uniquely bureauid lifestyle, responding to a highly bureau-oriented stimuli, and generally leading the bureau equivalent of the good life. And as theories go, this was all very fine and pleasant until Vít Vujicic suddenly claimed to have found this planet, and to have worked there for a while, driving a limousine for a family of cheap green rectangles, whereupon he was taken away, locked up, wrote a book, and was finally sent into tax exile, which is the usual fate reserved for those who have determined to make a fool of themselves in public. When one day an expedition was sent to the spatial coordinates that Vujicic had claimed for his planet, they discovered only a small asteroid inhabited by a solitary old man who claimed repeatedly that nothing was true, though he was later discovered to be lying. There did, however, remain the question of both mysterious 60,000 Altarian dollars paid yearly into his Brantisvogen bank account, and of course, Zaphod Beeblebrox's highly profitable second-hand bureau business. Arthur read this and put the book down. The robot still sat there, completely inert. Arthur got up and walked to the top of the crater. He walked around the crater. He watched two suns set magnificently over Magrathia. He went back into the crater. He woke the robot up, because even a manically depressed robot is better to talk to than nobody. "Night's falling," he said. "Look, robot. The stars are coming out." From the heart of a dark nebula, it is possible to see very few stars, and only very faintly. But they were there to be seen. The robot obediently looked at them, then looked back. "I know. Wretched, isn't it?" "But that's sunset. I've never seen anything like it. My wildest dreams. 2 suns. It was like mountains of fire boiling into space." "I've seen it," said Marvin. "It's rubbish." We only ever had one sun at home," persevered Arthur. "I came from a planet called Earth, you know." "I know," said Marvin. "You keep going on about it. It sounds awful." "Ah, no. It was a beautiful place." "Did it have oceans?" "Oh, yes," said Arthur with a sigh. "Great, wide, rolling blue oceans." "Can't bear oceans." "Tell me," inquired Arthur, "do you get on well with other robots?" "Hate them." "Where are you going?" Arthur couldn't bear any more. He had got up again. "I think I'll just take another walk." "Don't blame you," Marvin said, and counted 597,000 million sheep before falling asleep again a second later. Arthur slapped his arms about himself to try and get his circulation a little more enthusiastic about its job. He trudged back up the wall to the crater. Because the atmosphere was so thin and there was no moon, nightfall was very rapid, and it was now very dark. Because of this, Arthur practically walked into the old man before he noticed him. Chapter 22. He was standing with his back to Arthur, watching the very last glimmers of light sink into blackness behind the horizon. He was tallish, elderly, and dressed in a long gray robe. When he turned, his face was thin and distinguished, careworn but not unkind, the sort of face you would happily bank with. But he didn't turn yet, not even to react to Arthur's yelp of surprise. Eventually, the last rays of the sun had vanished completely, and he turned. His face was still illuminated from somewhere, and when Arthur looked for the source of light, he saw that a few yards away stood a small craft of some kind, a small hovercraft, Arthur guessed. It shed a dim pool of light around it. The man looked at Arthur, sadly it seemed. "You stood a cold night to visit our dead planet," he said. Who are you?" stammered Arthur. The man looked away. Again a look of sadness seemed to cross his face. "My name is not important. My name is not important," he said. He seemed to have something on his mind. Conversation was clearly something he felt he didn't have to rush at. Arthur felt awkward. You startled me," he said lamely. The man looked round to him again and slightly raised his eyebrows. "I said you startled me." "Do not be alarmed, I will not harm you." Arthur frowned at him. "But you shot at us. There were missiles." The man gazed into the pit of the crater. The slight glow from Marvin's eyes cast very faint red shadows on the huge carcass of the whale. The man chuckled slightly. "An automatic system," he said, and gave a small sigh. "Ancient computers ranged in the bowels of the planet tick away the dark millennia, and the ages hang heavy on their dusty databanks. I think they take the occasional pot shot to relieve the monotony." He looked gravely at Arthur and said, "I'm a great fan of science, you know." Really?" said Arthur, who was beginning to find the man's curious, kindly manner disconcerting. "Oh, yes," said the old man, and simply stopped talking again. "Ah," said Arthur. He had an odd feeling of being like a man in the act of adultery, who is surprised when the woman's husband enters the room, changes his trousers, passes a few idle remarks about the weather, and leaves again. "You seem ill at ease," said the old man with polite concern. No, well, yes. Actually, you see, we weren't really expecting to find anybody about, in fact. I sort of gathered you were all dead, or something." "Dead?" said the old man. "Good gracious me, no. We have been slept." "Slept?" Arthur said incredulously. "Yes, through the economic recession, you see," said the old man, apparently unconcerned about whether Arthur understood a word he was talking about or not. Arthur had to prompt him again. Economic recession?" "Well, you see, 5 million years ago, the galactic economy collapsed. And seeing that custom-built planets were something of a luxury commodity, you see." He paused and looked at Arthur. "You know we build planets, don't you?" he said solemnly. "Well, yes, I sort of gathered." "Fascinating trade," said the old man, with a wistful look came into his eyes. "Doing the coastlines was always my favorite. Used to have endless fun enjoying the little bits and fjords. So anyway," he said, trying to find his thread again, "the recession came and we decided it would save a lot of bother if we just slept through it. So we programmed the computers to revive us when it was all over." The man stifled a very slight yawn and continued. "The computers were index-linked to the galactic stock market prices, you see, so that we'd all be revived when everybody else had rebuilt the economy enough to afford our rather expensive services." Arthur, a regular Guardian reader, was deeply shocked at this. "That's a pretty unpleasant way to behave, isn't it?" "Is it?" said the old man mildly. "I'm sorry. I'm a bit out of touch." He pointed down at the crater. "Is that robot yours?" "No." "No," said a thin, metallic voice from the crater. "I'm mine." "If you'd call it a robot," muttered Arthur. "It's more a sort of electronic sulking machine." "Bring it," said the old man. Arthur was quite surprised to hear a note of decision suddenly present in the old man's voice. He called to Marvin, who crawled up the slope, making a big show of being lame, which he wasn't. "On second thought, leave it here. You must come with me. Great things are afoot." He turned towards his craft, which, though no apparent signal had been given, now drifted quietly towards them in the dark. Arthur looked down at Marvin, who now made an equivalently big show of turning round laboriously and trudging off down the crater again, muttering sour nothings to himself. Come now, or you'll be late. Late? What for? What is your name, human? Dent. Arthur Dent. Late as in the late Dent Arthur Dent, said the old man sternly. It's a sort of threat, you see. Another wistful look came into his tired old eyes. I've never been very good at them myself, but I'm told they can be very effective. Arthur blinked at him. What an extraordinary person, he muttered to himself. I beg your pardon. Oh, nothing. Sorry, Arthur said in embarrassment. All right, where do we go? In my air car, said the man, motioning to Arthur to get into the craft which they had settled silently next to them. We are going deep into the bowels of the planet, where even now your race is being revived from its 5 million year slumber. Magarathia awakes. Arthur shivered involuntarily as he seated himself next to the old man. The strangeness of it, the silent bobbing movement of the aircraft as it soared into the night sky, quite unsettled him. He looked at the old man, his face illuminated by the dull glow of tiny lights on the instrument panel. Excuse me, he said to him. What's your name, by the way? My name? And the same distant sadness came into his face again. He paused. My name is Slartibartfast. Arthur practically choked. I beg your pardon? Slartibartfast, repeated the old man quietly. Slartibartfast. The old man looked at him gravely. I said it wasn't important. The air car sailed through the night. Alright, that'll be it for tonight. I love you.